We are excited to introduce our sponsor Quest, where you can go to for non-stop brunch and lunch fun. You find them in the heart of Lisbon, and they're open every single day from 8 to 5. So check them out. We are so blessed to be able to record our podcast here in their space after hours. For more info, head over to their Instagram, quest_LX or questcoffee.pt.
Hello guys, and welcome to episode 3 of Under the Influence. Today I'm joined by my amazing co-host Karina, and also with me is Loza, who will be helping with the technical side of things and making sure that everything runs smoothly in the background.
Today I'm joined by two amazing guests, James and Cheri. First of all, how are you guys today?
We're great.
We're doing wonderful.
Yeah.
Looking forward to this.
We've been looking forward to having you guys on because you guys have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to biblical theology and just relationships in general, because you guys have a lot of experience in that side of things. I guess where we could start is with James. Could you tell the audience a bit about your background?
Oh, about me. Well, I grew up in Southern California, was raised in a church, a Baptist church, but really became a full-on believer when the Jesus movement hit Southern California, and really discovered that my faith was not just based upon a feeling, but it was based upon the reality of Christ's death and resurrection and how that was reasonable to believe. Graduated in college and went in on staff with an organization called Campus Crusade for Christ, and they're now called Cru, and worked on the college campuses and also toured with a music group because I was a musician. And then moved to Chicago, took a business job, but realized that wasn't for me, and went to seminary and attended Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, got my master's of divinity from there. Then became a pastor in the church, singles pastor and missions pastor for a while. Went back into business. I've been back and forth in business and in church, and then in church work. And then decided after that business experience that I really want to end my career doing something that was really meaningful and that kind of put everything together. So I went back for a master's of mental health, and got licensed as a professional clinical mental health counselor, and then moved with Cheri to, we were living in Chicago at the time, and moved with Cheri to California. We started our own business called Total Wellness Resource Center, where she was a coach, business coach, she'll tell you more about that, and nutrition coach, and I basically did the counseling and did the mental health therapy. So that's me.
Wow, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. And what about you, Cheri?
My story, well, I didn't grow up in a Christian home.
Okay.
And so, but I did meet Christ when I was 9. He happened to meet me in a abandoned house. Wow. Where he presented himself by, I found a Bible, which I'd never even heard what a Bible was or heard the name Jesus. And I actually took that Bible with me and started reading it at the age of 9. And probably 9 and a half, I started sneaking out of my house. But believe it or not, it was to go to church because my parents didn't go to church. So I have had a very intimate relationship with God. It was never formed by a church. I never knew the ins and outs to be proper in church, but I did know what God's love was.
Wow.
And so I always wanted to get out of the ghetto, which is where I was born and raised. And so I focused on education. I had a passion for business. And that took me that by the age of 20, I'd already started my first business. And then I was fortunate enough to work for a major venture capitalist who sent me to Harvard for my MBA, and did that for almost a decade, where I traveled predominantly internationally to help people set up their businesses, to do acquisitions in businesses, and learned a lot, not only on the business aspect, but people.
Yeah.
Because the people that I became engaged with were all international. They were from different backgrounds, whether they were Muslim, whether they were Hindu, whether they were, from China, whether they were from, Europe. It was just this very rich life of connection and people. I then, at a young age, decided to retire. I think I was 48. And I decided to retire because I was working, close to 100 hours a week. And started finding myself getting very tired, wasn't feeling that well. And so I decided I was just going to stop and go explore and hike the world and kind of enjoy my time. And then I happened to meet James. Completely changed my whole direction again.
I unretired her.
And we ended up starting another business. So that's my story.
Loza wants me to ask you guys how you guys met. How did you guys meet?
How did we meet? Well, I had been single for 7 years, and you had been single for 15. And frankly, I got to the place to where I realized that I was not doing really well alone. And I looked around at some older men that were my age who were single, and I realized that if you live alone, you're not getting the kind of feedback that you need in order to grow in a healthy way. And having now gone through and become a licensed clinical therapist, I just realized how important relationships were, and also I just was real lonely. I wanted them to help me, and I wanted somebody to love and to be there with me and to share life with. So I did the extraordinary thing of going on Match.com and put an ad in, or put my profile in, and I basically said this. I said, I am a passionate follower of Jesus Christ. And if you're still reading this is more about me. And this lovely woman here read that, and she said, I want to know more about him. So we reached out and we talked, and our first conversation, I was driving from the North Shore of Chicago down to the city, and I was going to meet with some pastors down there, and we had a conversation that was an hour-long conversation that lasted 1 minute, and it was just so full of laughter and humor and fun. And I said, I've got to meet this woman. I've just got to meet this woman. And she said at the very end, and I'll let you tell the first story of our first date, because you do that so well.
It's a funny story.
Yeah. I said at the very end, she said, before we meet, you need to know something. You need to know that I have a visual impairment. And I thought, And I said, you remember what I said?
We all have something.
We all have something. And we met, and the rest is, as they say, history, right? So about our first date.
Well, my story
you tell
is
your story.
totally different than this story again.
Well, I hope so.
That. But I had been single for 15 years, and I had no desire to remarry. And that had nothing to do with I didn't love men, I didn't love relationship, that I had any issue with marriage, because I think it's beautiful. But I just was very happy. I was very content. I had a phenomenal career. I just had a happy life. And there was just not that feeling of loneliness for me, or that need that I need somebody to complete me.
Wow.
In fact, I believe in my ad, I said I'm not looking for somebody who wants to complete me, but maybe wants to embellish my life. And I also wasn't looking to date. And so mine was, I was new to the city. I just moved to Chicago. I didn't know a lot of people, and I love baseball, and I love football, and I like going out and having a beer. And so my ad was more of, hey, I'm looking for somebody to hang out with, but I'm not looking for a relationship.
Yeah.
And so anyway, James, here's where we differ too. James reached out to me. I didn't reach out to him. But he reached out to me, and again, we did have this amazing first conversation. And so we decided to meet for coffee, for breakfast, keeping it in public, keeping it simple.
Yeah.
And again, as he mentioned, I'm visually impaired. So I texted him right before we were supposed to meet, and I said, hey, I won't see what you look like. what are you wearing? Because I can see color.
Yeah.
And he texts back and he says, I have a Hawaiian shirt and khakis. Now, I hate Hawaiian shirts and I hate khakis on men.
She even had me change today.
I am looking towards the door so I can go out the back door, because this wasn't going to be a Match.com match at all.
Yeah.
And then he showed up, and we just instantly, if you've ever met anybody and you just know they're good, I mean, you sense, you don't know anything about them, but you sense a beautiful spirit.
Yeah.
And immediately I felt that with him. I didn't even see, the Hawaiian shirt any longer. And we sat down and I scooted a little closer because I couldn't see him.
Yeah.
And he scooted backwards because I frightened him. And then after about, I say a half an hour, it's probably an hour, I just said, I want to reiterate, I'm not looking for a relationship. Okay, so if you want to go and just go see the games and just hang out, I'm the girl, I'll do that. And his response was, okay, we'll hang out forever. and what that did was establish, I let him know right away I wasn't looking for a relationship, and he let me know he was.
Yeah.
But once he said that, I looked at him differently, and I started sizing him up. Is that a forever guy?
Yeah.
Which I didn't think I was looking for. And that started at breakfast, and we ended the day probably 1 o'clock the next morning. Not the next morning, but the day went through. So it was probably about a 12, 13-hour date.
Wow, that's a
before
long.
we ended the date.
That's a long time.
Yeah, and I teased him that he asked me to marry him that day. I don't think he really did, but he did let me know he was looking for a woman that he would.
Probably pretty
respect
close
enough
to
Yeah, kind of
pretty close, yeah.
But I guess the main reason I have you guys here today is sort of to give us more knowledge on the biblical aspects of dating. Like, what is the proper, I guess, the Christian way of dating? Like, if there is a Christian way of dating, like, how should we do that in today's culture and society? Which brings me to the first question. Is the concept of dating mentioned in the Bible?
Do you want a short answer? No.
If you could, yeah.
It is not.
It is not.
Dating is not mentioned in the Bible. Relationships are.
Okay.
It's all about relationships. And so if you're just looking for a 1, 2, 3 on how to date and how to get a guy or how to get a woman, the Bible is not your place to go. The Bible is about God's relationship with us and our relationship with each other.
Wow.
Well, and I think what you said was clear, that the reason you won't find it scripturally is the culture and the timing in which Scripture was written.
Yeah.
Marriage and relationships had a total different purpose and meaning than what we are seeing today in modern time.
Absolutely. I mean, the family was it during. It was family. It was economics. It was tradition. It was social norms. All those things. Marriage was more of a marriage of family in the biblical times, and it was more of an economic necessity. But now, with the autonomy that we have, with the accessibility to a wide range, I mean, you have people. When I was counseling, I'd get people who are having real relationships with people who were thousands of miles away, and they could. You couldn't have done that in the first century, and also the individualization of our culture. Our world, it tends to think about what my needs are. How are you going to meet my needs? Rather than thinking largely about a relationship. In other words, how are we going to be together, and how are we going to contribute to the community? And the first century was about that, because it was survival. I mean, we don't do that. People can live on their own now forever and never suffer. In fact, many of them flourish economically. I don't think they flourish emotionally or spiritually, but I think they flourish. They can flourish in our culture.
We have such a culture of, I mean, it's all over Instagram and TikTok. Everyone posts about being the main character, and everybody is just about themselves. And I think for us, I mean, being in our 20s and looking for yeah, I mean, I have the desire to build a family and the desire to have children, and obviously for that I need a husband, so that is also part of that. But it's so hard because it feels like the whole world around us just evolves about everyone individually, and people aren't even like able to come together, and it's completely lost how people could approach each other in order to start dating or build a life together. And when you shared your story, it's interesting because you were kind of on the I'm not really looking for anything, but you were very clear about what you wanted. And so, yeah, I'm just always so curious to hear these stories, because I feel like, I mean, for us, it feels like we're living in a really hard time with that, because the values are lost of what marriage means, or also what motherhood and womanhood could be potentially. So yeah, I think it's beautiful when we can dive further into like what your thoughts are on how dating can be approached, how relationships can be approached.
Well, for me, I think the first thing I heard you say is that the main character, we are the main character.
Yeah.
And right there's the flaw.
Yeah, that's the problem.
That if God is not your main character, then the chances of your marriage surviving is very small.
Yeah.
There's stats, and I'm not sure what the international stats are, but in the U.S., the stats are, it is 1 out of, 50 out of 100 marriages will end in divorce.
Yeah.
The second marriages, 75 out of 100 will end in divorce. But they did a stat, and this is through John Gottman, which he studied under, that families or couples that pray together and God is the main character, 1 out of 100 end in divorce. And if that is not a powerful statement.
It is.
So making God your primary character, or the core character,
Yes.
and you guys are just, the casting on the side.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to find the right mate, and when you find the right mate, you're going to have the same moral compass and a higher chance of survival in the relationship.
Yeah.
There's another aspect to dating that I find to be pretty difficult. A lot of dating is like a job interview for a relationship.
That's so true.
You sit down and look at your resume. Do you line up here? How do you compare to the other resumes that I have in my file over here? And if you do, then we'll go on for a second interview. Otherwise, and I think that's totally opposite to the way in which God would have us look at relationships. I think He has us look at relationships as being first off, love. Love is seeking the very best in that other person, or seeking the very best for that other person. And so when you're dating, the question really is, how can I love this person? How can I contribute to this person? One of the things I've used to say to guys all the time, I said, you should be thinking about the woman that you're dating like you were the husband who will eventually marry her. And in the Sierra Club, they have a statement that says, leave nothing but footprints, take nothing but pictures, and always leave the campsite better than you found it. I would just love it if Christian guys would say, as a result of the 1 or 2 or 3 or however long times we meet together with this woman, is she going to be more in love with Jesus? Is she going to be more prepared to give her heart to a man, more capable of feeling confident in her relationship with God and her identity? Is she going to grow because of this time? And I will tell you that in our relationship, that one of the most beautiful things is that we try very hard to outdo each other in helping each other accomplish their goals and to achieve what it is that God wants them to do, even if you don't quite understand. I mean, even if it's not your thing, we're still saying, how can I be an instrument in God's hands to show you love and to have Him love through me?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
One thing that we both do, and I think we do it with excellence, is that when I wake up in the morning, my first thought is, how do I take care of James? Not how do I get my needs met? How can I pray for him? How can I just love on him? How can I help him accomplish all of his goals and glorify God? And I know without a doubt he does the same for me.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean our marriage is perfect. Don't get me wrong. You know,
It isn't?
It isn't. In fact,
Doggone it.
we do have a saying that, and I think I was telling you this weekend, we have a saying that 90% of our relationship, we knock it out of the ballpark. It is beautiful. But the other 10%, there's 5% where I'm saying, what have I done? You know, and there's 5% where he's saying that. So when we talk about our marriage, I don't want to present it as it's always perfect. You know, we're both humans, we both have our shortcomings. But I do know that when we wake up in the morning, regardless of what the night was before, our first thought is, how do we love each other better?
That was kind of new, though, because a lot of marriages are 50-50. You do this for me, I do this for you. It's tit for tat. It's but I remember the situation.
I love that word.
Transactional.
Very true.
I remember one of the ways in which this kind of came about is that I would love to get coffee for her first thing in the morning. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And remember when I first started bringing you coffee in the morning, remember what you said?
Probably that I could get my own.
Yeah. You've been living on your own. I can get my own coffee. I don't need you to get my coffee. And remember what I said?
Don't rob me of my joy.
Exactly. Because I think the joy that is in the service, the joy is in the giving. The Bible says that it's more blessed to give than to receive. So he gets the blessing when something is being given. It's the giver.
Yeah.
So if you try to outgive the other person, you are going to be in a blessed situation, not just a blessed marriage, but you'll be personally blessed.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Would you like to transition us to the next?
I feel like there's like one more thing that came up for me because, I mean, all of this sounds so beautiful, right? And obviously there's a lot of work involved and things that go into being married and then sticking together and growing together. But the big question that always comes up for me is because I have such a heart for marriage and I have such a big desire for that, but I still don't want to be on a search in a way because I know that also doesn't really work. And so I'm wondering what your thoughts are, especially like for women, but also for men. Like, should we prepare ourselves? Should we do specific things, or just like live life and see if we stumble across our partner? Because in this day, we have all these dating apps, obviously, as well. I mean, you met online, which is great, but for us, it almost seems like that's like the only option. And then the whole culture around that is like just swipe, and it's not like there are too many options in a way for people, and so I think no one is really. I think it's like a sort of pandemic that everybody's not ready to commit because they could potentially find someone better, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts or tips for us in the culture that you see us living in, how we could do it better.
Do you want to respond
No,
first?
you go right ahead.
Okay. Again, I don't have all the answers,
Yeah.
and there is a difference in timing than when we were dating. But I have a daughter close to your age, and I always told her, you don't worry about that mate.
Yeah.
You worry about you. You be the person you want to attract. Mm-hmm. That's your primary focus, is you being whole, you being complete. No one else is ever going to fulfill all your needs.
Yeah.
And yes, I understand the need for children. I understand. But that does come, but it's only going to come when you yourself have worked on you.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I think that it is a negative even though I met my husband online, you're right. People who aren't ready or aren't serious, it's a swipe game.
Yeah.
You know? I would just say I would involve myself around other like-minded people at church, at other churches, at events, things that aren't online where most, not all of them, most are truly trying to see how many women they can date or how many men they can date. So it's in the environment that you want to live in, which is, a Christian environment, putting yourself there, but not solely just looking around the room going, who's my mate.
Yeah.
For me as an example, that's the last thing I was looking for. God had the plan for me. And I'm not saying that God had him all lined up waiting for me.
Really?
Yeah, really. But the perfect union, because I was healthy, I was whole.
Yeah.
You know, he was healthy, he was whole. And it just became evident when we met that we were going to enhance and not get something from the other one per se. So my answer is focus on you. Be the woman that you want to attract, the kind of person you want to attract, and make that your priority. Work on your relationship with God, and then it's trust.
Yeah,
you know
it's trust.
that if you were to have children, you know, it's not just you deciding that. It is really a part of, you know, your destination. I don't want to use the word destination, but part of your journey.
That's true. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with that. And I would also say that I think your focus is always on, your identity is always in Christ. It's not in the relationships. And busy yourself with doing the things that God has put it before you to do. I mean, use the gifts of the Spirit that God has given you. Find joy and fulfillment in those things. And I will tell you, just as a man, there is absolutely nothing more radiant and more attractive to a godly man than a woman who is experiencing her joy in serving the Lord. It is so attractive, and it will attract the right people. You know, Cheri has a saying, hockey players date hockey players. Okay, and I have never quite understood that, because I think, well, I don't want to even go into it, but I get the bottom line. The bottom line is that people who have a similar passion in life will attract a similar passion. Now, that's not to say that there isn't going to be opposites attract, and we really know about that, and probably for another podcast down the road to talk about how that works, because that's complicated. That's a complicated equation right there. Opposites attracting and then trying to live together is not easy. But the initial attraction that you have is for somebody who is doing something so beautiful that it causes you to be drawn to it. And may that be something for the Lord. And once again, I do believe in intentional dating. But the intention is always, how am I loving this person? How is God loving this person through me? That's the intention. And when that's an intention, then no matter what happens in that relationship, no matter whether it's a 1 date or a 10 dates, it's a success. It moves you forward. It causes you to grow closer to God and closer to people, and builds on the experience as you go forward. Because a lot of people in relationships, they go through, let's face it, nobody just marries that person right out of the gate, right? I hope not. Every relationship you have is building something in you, characters, causing you to see something different, see yourself different, experience life different. So when you do come to that person that is going to be your life mate, you're ready for them, and you have something to offer them.
Yeah. We had some questions actually that kind of segue with what we were just talking about, and it was like very specific questions on, is there any advice that you have for young men on approaching and pursuing women in an intentional way, and how important is it to make intentions clear early on? What is your take on that?
Go for it.
Well, we talked about this before coming here, and we had a problem with pursuing.
Yeah.
The word pursuing.
Yeah.
Sounds a little too much like stalking.
Yeah, exactly. I think maybe you should speak to it from the male's perspective, and then I will chime in on.
Yeah, we have the same question for women after.
Oh, awesome. Great. She gets to be put on this on the firing line. Once again, with men are basically hunters, okay? You take a man shopping, the only time they'll ever be happy is if you tell him exactly what you want and what color it is and what size it is, and just send him like a hound dog out to sniff it out. That makes a man very happy because he's found it. And I know this is generalization, and it could be very sexist, but I'm going to go there because I found it to be absolutely true in the hundreds of people that I've counseled. So men are intentional. So make sure that your intention is godly. Make
Yeah.
sure your intention is something that is going to benefit the woman that's sitting across from you or that you're meeting with. And define the relationship. And I've heard some very smart person said there are two speeds in relationship, slow and stop. And it's important that you take it slow. And I know we're going to get more into the physical aspect of it a little bit later, but that comes into it, that comes into this, that when a man is pursuing a woman, the man is pursuing a woman for her betterment, for her spiritual growth, for her social growth, for all those other things. And if a woman sees that, she can trust it. And I think that's one of the things that Cheri was attracted to with me is that really she could trust her. She could trust me. She could trust that I really wanted her best at heart, and that I wasn't going to cross the line. I wasn't going to just use her to get my own needs met, but that we were pursuing a relationship that was going to be honoring and glorifying to God.
Yeah.
Sometimes as a guy, as a single guy, sometimes I question if I'm actually ready, because I'm always questioning myself. I'm like, oh, I'm not in the right position, like monetarily or spiritually, or I don't know. It could be anything. What do you have to say for people who think they're not in the right place to be in a relationship at the moment?
Well, Farouk, I will tell you categorically, you're not ready. You'll never be ready. Okay? There is no such thing as ready.
Yeah.
There is only pursuing love.
Pursuing love?
Pursuing love. Pursuing to being a loving person, connecting and relating and bringing life to people. That's what it's about. And if you ever think that you've got to be ready, and that you've got to have all these things in a row, all your money and all your experience and everything, you'll never get there.
I just disagree.
Yeah.
I think there are times you're ready and times that you're not ready.
Okay.
I think you know your heart and what you're, again, back to the intention. What is your intention? If you're pursuing a woman, dating,
Yes.
why, if you already think I'm not ready, and I'm not talking about if you're not financially ready, because that I agree, you're never going to be ready. I mean, there's always these, what I consider excuses, but you know your heart. You know whether you're thinking, I would like to share life forever with somebody. And if you're not ready, that's okay. I think that's when you let somebody know your intent. I think you're wonderful. I think you're terrific. I think that we both can grow in a friendship. I'm not ready. That doesn't mean you're not the one. That doesn't mean in 5 years I won't be ready. It means today you have a right to know how I think and how I feel. I think where relationships go bad is when you know that and you don't share that. I think it's very unfair to the people that you're involved with.
That's dishonest.
It's very dishonest. So if you know you're not ready, it's okay. If you find as time goes, you're still very young, but as time goes and you're going, wait, I'm starting to find this as an excuse with every woman, then you need to look at yourself and say, what am I afraid of? What's, is there fear here? Or is it just really, I'm not ready to settle down?
Yeah.
And like I said, if you're not, be candid. I would expect that from any man I would consider dating to have an idea where he's standing, so that I can make an informed decision on how I want to spend my time.
Yeah, I think as men, speaking for myself, I would prefer someone to grow with, rather than having it all like together and then finding that person. I would rather like build with someone who was with me from the beginning,
Yes.
And then that's why anytime I see people who've been in relationships since they were like 13 or like high school relationships and they're still together, like I'm like, wow, that's amazing, I look at it and I'm like, wow.
Explain that again to me. I'm not sure I followed. You're looking at somebody who's imperfect.
So someone who's like built, like they started their relationship from a young age,
Right.
And they built like, I don't know, they started like very young, and then they kind of grow together, rather than the man having it all figured out and he's like, the perfect article, and then then
Right.
the woman comes in, you know?
Right.
I prefer to build with a woman.
Well, and I will just say this, is that I think if you want to learn how to have a relationship, you have relationships. Imperfect relationships, and they'll always be imperfect. Even the marriage relationship is going to be imperfect. I mean, if somebody once said, what's the difference between a writer and a non-writer? Well, writers write. What's the difference between a musician and non-musician? Musicians make music. What's the difference between a person who's good at relationships and those who are not? You have relationships.
Yeah.
You have all kinds of relationships. And I think what Cheri is saying, that you have relationships that are not deep or not profound. You have some that are. You have best friends. You have casual friends. You have all kinds of relationships in order to learn how to have relationships. And the deepest, most profound relationship that you can enter into is a marriage relationship. But that's not an isolated thing. It's not like you're on a desert island and suddenly you find the woman, who just washes up on shore. No.
I wish it was like that.
Isn't it? Don't we all? But it isn't. Relationships come through a lot of tears and a lot of broken hearts and a lot of pain. Relationships are hard. They're very hard because we're selfish, broken creatures. And even in a marriage, we'll break the other person and then we'll cry and have to heal. And so it's not for cowards either, by the way. And if you're not interested in avoiding pain at all costs, then by all means, don't have relationships. You'll experience another kind of pain, which is far worse. But relationships, especially relationships that go deep, you're vulnerable. You can get hurt.
I would also say that the story of meeting at 13 and growing old together, I don't want to call it a fairy tale because it does happen, but it's few and far between.
Rare.
And I'll tell you why I think when we think that way, we can hit a stumbling block. It's because you have not fully developed. You don't know who you are. It's not that you're this incomplete man. You just don't know who you are. So to pick your mate at that particular time would offer its own challenges.
Yeah.
Plus, what we end up doing, even at, say, 16, 17, 18 to 20, whatever, you could even be 50 and do this, you fall in love with potential, not who they are, not who they're going to be. It's the potential of who you think they can become. And I see that more and more with people where they check all the boxes. They're beautiful, they're intelligent, they're capable, they're competent, they're this or that. They want 3 children, you want 4, you've decided on 3.5. I mean, everything checks. But when it comes to their moral compass, they go to church every once in a while. They present themselves, as though they're, a Christian.
Yeah.
And you fall in love thinking, I'll just keep going and they'll come with me. And that part will develop. And to me, that's just the ingredients for a disaster. That's why when you see somebody 13 on up, it's probably a family situation. They grew up. I mean, same culture, same everything. I think in this situation that we're in, especially here in Lisbon, we're all from different cultures. We're all from different backgrounds. That story is much more difficult to write, especially as we get older. But where I see the stumbling block is, again, falling in love with potential and thinking that you're going to take them to another level.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get married and find out, wait, that's a major stumbling block. So I would just, again, it's a warning that that's something that I see frequently in young marriages.
I guess we're past the age anyways.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen anymore. We also had the question, though, for the women's side coming up from our audience, because, I mean, nowadays every media tells a woman she can pursue a man and should reach out and make known that she's interested, or even ask a guy out for a date. And when I don't know, I feel like I have some traditionalness in my heart maybe, but yeah, I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on a woman showing her interest to a man, and how she could potentially do that in either ways of just not asking the guy out directly, or if you think there's no problem in it, she should just go for it. Like, what are your thoughts
Well, I'm
on
an
that?
old woman with some modern thoughts, I guess. I think when you start manipulating how you feel and how you share those feelings with somebody, you're playing a game.
Yeah.
So I see no problem in a woman approaching a man saying, I find you very attractive, or I find you very interesting. I would love to have a coffee, or whatever that might look like. But when you start kind of hiding and shying and setting things up, well, I'm going to look to see where he's at on Instagram, and I'm going to show up. And, it just, to me, it seems very phony and manipulative and like game playing. So, whether that's biblical or not, I have no problem with a woman letting a man know if she's interested, and if she wants to get to know them better.
What do you think are the best ways to let a guy know that you're interested?
Well, you're talking to probably the most direct woman you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
So, again, there's a lot of ways. If you're hanging in the circle, right, with like-minded people, the chances are you do social groups together.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's obvious when there's a chemistry that connects between a man and a woman.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, maybe not the first time, but if I kept sensing that I was attracted or whatever, there's nothing on a one-off to say, hey, I wouldn't mind having a coffee. Okay. That's simple. Or a glass of wine, or whatever your thing is. Not I'm interested in dating you, because she doesn't know at that point. Yeah. But just to be able to, hey, I'm finding you interesting. I love the fact that you're in photography. I'm starting to get into that. Can we connect on that?
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting, because we talked also about that, because we had this conversation around maybe a woman saying something like, I'm something like, I wouldn't mind going for a coffee, or like phrasing it in a way that it sounds, that it's almost like taking a step back and making it very subtle. And then you were saying to me with some of the things that I said that girls might use as phrasings that a guy might not even understand that. So, so I like your way of being like, well, I would be like super direct with it. Yeah. So I don't know how you think about that, but
I think what it does is it causes a woman to say, why are you interested? What is it about him that you're finding interesting? Yeah. And why not say that? Hey, your spirit just seems amazing. Or you love God. I find that so attractive. Yeah. Or why can't we share that? That doesn't mean you're going to marry him. That doesn't mean there's even going to be dating. But you've just recognized a beautiful quality in this man that you're attracted to. Yeah. To share that with them, and then just say, hey, could we have whatever that next line is.
I like the idea of giving a reason, because I feel like sometimes when we say, oh, we could meet for a coffee one day or something, it's too uncommitted, even from the women's side. It could be something that she says to everyone, right? Mm-hmm. Just as like a nicety or something. Right. And so when you combine it with something that, oh, I actually am interested in a part of you, wherever that leads me, I find that's pretty cool.
Well, and also I think that if I just said, hey, I find you interesting, I want to spend time with you, a man may think totally different what that means, right?
Yeah, as a guy, I would be like, oh, maybe she's interested.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, it could take you down a different path. So if you're clear in what you're finding attractive, and that, I'd like to talk about it more, I'd like to learn more about who you are and your story. You're not just, hey, I want to get together. That is just leaves it open for interpretation with the other partner. And if it isn't a partner that's well rooted in the moral compass, it could certainly go a different direction than you want it to.
Yeah. And this also leads us back to the original, is that if you walk up to a guy and you say, I think you're really handsome, you're cute, I love your jeans or something like that, that's so, that is so, it can be there, but that's not the thing that drives relationships. So if you're saying, I see these qualities in you, I see these things that I really prize, because as we are more and more in love with Jesus, and as he's becoming more and more dominant in our life and the qualities that he produces, we see those in other people and we're attracted to that. And that really is the foundation of a quality relationship. And I know we'll get on to the physical part, but that's a really that's the place where we start, because those things are eternal. The physical is temporary.
Yeah.
Like even what you said about when the example that you gave where the girl came up to the guy, I was like, oh, I like how you, it's all outward appearance,
Right.
rather than inward.
Yeah, and it can be very misunderstood because we're in a hookup culture. So if some, cute girl comes up to you and says, I like your jeans, what are you going to do? You're going to think that's where she's at. That's where her mind is at, and that's what her... So, no, we really do need to be focused on the things that are foundational and in a relationship, all relationships.
Yeah.
Do you want to go to the next one?
Should we go to the physical attraction part?
Sure.
Because I feel like we touched upon this now for a bit already.
Very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How important is physical attraction? Very important.
I personally think it's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, and again, you have to understand, I'm blind. I don't see faces. I don't see, but I still know what I find attractive.
She finds me very attractive,
I do.
and you cannot
So,
tell her
anyway,
that.
no, I
Anything
think
else.
it's very important, and I've had sight before. I believe that when you get to know somebody and really know their heart, what you may not have found attractive, you may find extremely attractive.
Yeah.
But I do, so at some point when you're moving forward in this relationship, attraction to me is very important.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that it's a 10, that they're a model, that he, has the perfect nose. It just means you've explored him enough to find his character and the way he was created as extremely attractive. You want to walk in public and, kind of strut your husband a little bit or your boyfriend. I don't think anything's wrong with that. If that's all you're looking for,
Yeah.
you're going to be disappointed because 10 years down the road, I guarantee you, I don't look anything like I did when we first met. More wrinkles, more, jowl lines. It changes.
Yeah.
And so it needs to be the whole person is extremely attractive
Yeah.
to you.
I think that's something that we touched upon this before when we talked about singleness and all of that. And I think the thing that felt to me like misconstrued in the way that I was experiencing dating and life the past couple of years, also as a non-Christian, it was often about like immediate physical attractiveness, and that was the thing that was kind of put forward, or someone saying to me, oh, you shouldn't be with this person because obviously they aren't as pretty as you are. So, and these are things that I honestly said. So I heard those things, and I also feel like a lot of the things that I've been seeing, consuming, and obviously movies, TV, and so on and so forth, definitely had an impact on myself as well, of viewing the other person in that way for a while. And so I do definitely see myself being on a path where that like physical outward attractiveness, the very superficial one, that is something that has been dropping away or is dropping away. And I totally love what you've been saying of that, the character and all of that kind of flows into the physical attractiveness, and it gives you like a sort of whole package situation.
If I can be as bold to share my attraction to James.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
What-
Here we go.
I'm ready for this.
Be bold,
I
baby.
feel no, because I was actually, before I met James,
Yeah.
I loved 6'4", Italian looking, dark skin, kind of slick back, greasy hair, James, and nor his looks nor his personalities fit what I thought would be best for me.
Yeah.
Right? I had again, it was very shortly after I met him, I find him the most attractive man I've ever met.
Yeah.
And totally different than what I would have gravitated to, let's say, in a bar and went to look at, get to know this guy. And so I think it's nature. I think we see things we like.
Yeah.
We see jewelry, we see clothes, we see whatever. We find this attractive, and that's okay. If you're looking at engaging in a relationship, it has to go much deeper.
Yeah.
Would you say it was like a process of getting to that stage, or was it just like right off the bat?
We moved really
Sorry,
fast.
sorry,
I mean,
James.
No, because
I think
he
we're
is
outliers.
No, he
Yeah.
is attractive, and it was just a difference than what I thought I would be attracted to. James's heart and spirit was revealed to me immediately. Immediately. I mean, I'm talking within 48 hours. I'm like, I have never met a man this kind and this good. I've never met a man. I've met a lot of Christians in my life. I've never met a man that I felt truly lived that life. And so my attraction immediately became, I would just stare at him then after a while, you know. I tried to put all of his face together, his features. And so it was, once I saw and he was willing to reveal who he was, it happened quick. Now, if he played games with me and kind of hid that, I may have never seen it.
Yeah.
But he was just bold and upfront with me and who he was and what he wanted, that you couldn't miss it. So it was quick.
And I'll just say that I think attraction is what brings you together. I mean, I think God created us to be attracted, to want to be attracted to our mate. I probably wouldn't have asked Cheri for a date if I didn't find her extraordinarily attractive, and just pulled me in. I mean, just pulled me in.
Yeah.
But what you do after that is extremely important, because my philosophy on dating and building relationships is that you start at the bottom, which is your spiritual connection, and then you move up to your social connection, and then you can go up to this physical. And the physical always needs to be it needs to be the last. It's an expression of a commitment. And what happens in our culture is the physical has the pyramid has been turned on its head. The physical has become the first thing that happens in a relationship. And what it does is it sabotages the other two aspects. Because when you get into a physical, and there's all sorts of brain science around this and how we bond, but when you get into physical relationship, you cease to be able to make good decisions about the long-term viability of that relationship, and you get stuck. And men will tell you, and women will tell you over and over again, I'm living with this person, and they're not the right person for me, but we're still having sex, and that's good, and the sex is good, so we just keep going. And it will sabotage. And I've said something today that Cheri thought was profound, and I don't know if it is, but sex is like fire in a home.
Yeah.
It can heat the home or it can destroy the home. And so if you're able to recognize that is a viable need, it's a beautiful thing. Sex is a wonderful thing. God created it. It's wonderful, but it's to be reserved in a committed relationship and protected because it bonds the couple. Yeah. And if you're not on the same page spiritually, you're not the same page socially, not culturally so much, but that you're seeing the world the same way, not perfectly the same way. We still have disagreements, but if you're not committed, you're not connected in those areas, then sex is not going to be able to join you. It's not gonna be the glue, the super glue to keep you together.
Well, and I would just say be careful using the word in a committed relationship, because a lot of people are in committed relationships for 6 months, and another one in 6 months, and then another one in 6 months.
Right.
I would say marriage.
Right.
Yeah.
When I hear the word commitment, that's marriage. And I use this explaining to my daughter about being physical prior to marriage. And our bodies really are a gift. I mean, it's incredibly special to share our bodies. And it's not just the physical, it is the emotional, that we're sharing.
Yeah.
And I use the analogy with her, if you choose to have multiple relationships prior to marriage and you sleep with multiple people, you may be committed and think you love them. You're leaving pieces with them. So then when you meet your husband and you marry him, you have all of that you bring with you. And I use the part of it would be very similar for a man to, every time he dated somebody, is to give her an engagement ring. Next time he gives the same ring to the next girl. Next time he gives that same ring to the next girl. By the time he meets you and you're the right girl, he's already given that ring 10 times. how would that make you feel? I mean, it loses some of the power, the connection, the beauty of that intimacy.
Yeah.
You know, so if we see ourselves in that way and put ourselves like in the man's position, really? Do I want that ring he bought Susie and Karen and Kristen and, you know, Kelly and whoever the name may be? And the answer is
Yeah.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
And that's giving that your husband that reassurance that this is yours, all yours. You know, this is
Yeah.
how important you are to me. So
Yeah.
it's just another way of thinking of, you know,
Yeah.
you may love somebody, you may want to desperately, that's natural. It's going back and who am I, who do I want to be, and who do I want to be with my mate, my
Yeah.
lifelong mate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I would have known that when I was 20, because like obviously I didn't grow up in an environment where that was something that was what was talked about or would have been the norm. I grew up in an environment where I was actually pushed towards like, where is your first relationship? Because I was like, in the worldly sense, very late with everything, but I was then like pushed towards having all of that because it almost sounded too well, when I was talking to people around me and the games that they played at university and stuff like that, I was the odd one out. So
Yeah.
I was literally pushed into that direction of, oh, I should make it happen. And looking back, that obviously, to one part, I first of all, I completely accept that that was my path, and I was brought here, and it is part of my journey. But also, to one part, it makes me definitely sad because I just hope now it feels like something that I feel very strongly about. I just want to encourage other young women to know about exactly what you just explained, how you leave your parts with those partners and how you already give them everything and you tie yourself emotionally and you have a way harder time to exit if it's necessary because you haven't committed yet, and they also don't have any commitment towards you yet. So there's so much in that, which I just hope that through conversation for maybe some women can be reached and this can be restored for some women. And also I just feel very strongly about wanting to have these conversations because even now that I have chosen to live differently, it is still like, even when I shared that to some people that I'm close with who do not walk with Christ in their life, they are very much like, are you sure you should try a person out, things like that, you know? And
How do you know if it's going to be any good?
yeah. And I just see it as something, and that's so interesting as well because it feels like it's always been within me, that I always had that feeling. It's not about that. You don't need to try a person because it's just not about that. It's about getting to know a person, and all of this is something that you're growing in together because there are so many other layers that need to be in place first before you like give yourself so openly to another person. Right. So I think it's so valuable that we are having this conversation.
You're definitely out of step with our culture. Yeah. When you have that view.
I would also say that you said, I wished I knew this. I think that we don't, until we take our last breath, we're learning.
Yeah,
and
obviously.
James and I will still say, man, I wished I knew that.
Yeah.
I wished I, and decades from now we'll be going, man, I wish I would have known that. So it's giving yourself grace for that, and then knowing that you are changed.
Yeah.
You know, once you became Christian, once you became, a child of God and acknowledged and accepted, all of that is so gone, and you can take those lessons and teach other young girls that don't know that.
Yeah.
So I believe me, I made a ton of mistakes, and I would never put it on a recording. You're not going to hear them. But no, we all have. We've all made choices that weren't our best choices.
Of course.
But the key is, once you realize that, is learning and then taking that knowledge and helping somebody else. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as a society we put like sex at the top of the pedestal over everything.
Oh yeah.
Well, it validates us. It makes us feel beautiful. It makes us feel wanted. And I think for women, we feel loved.
Yeah.
It's just in us to think if a man wants us, we must be beautiful and desirable, and they must love us.
Would you agree in me saying that it's actually, in a sense, almost more dangerous for women? Because I feel like once you guys have that or have gone through that, then you guys create a
such a strong bond with that person to where it becomes even more difficult for you to, I guess, leave. Like if that's not the right person for you,
Right,
and then you've done that, yeah.
Psychologically, I'd say yes.
I mean,
Spiritually, it's the same for both. You
right.
both have interrupted the purpose of a relationship and
Yeah.
a godly relationship.
Yeah.
But yes, I think women are more emotional.
Mm.
I think we do tie more value into a physical relationship in a non-committed relationship. I do think that there's many people that are broken, and the reason that that is so prevalent is the brokenness among women and the lack of their own identity and the lack of them loving themselves, that I need you to find me attractive because I look in the mirror and I don't like it. But you, if you find me attractive, that validates me.
Yeah.
And so I think that, yeah, women are much more vulnerable.
Yeah.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think it's also the way in which women were created and the way men are created. I remember sitting at a seminar for young teen pregnant women, teen pregnancies, and the professor got up, or the teacher got up and said, "I want to teach you the most important lesson you can ever learn." And she said, "I want you to open your hand, and I want you to say this into your hand. I want you to say, 'Baby, I love you, 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 I love you. Please have sex with me because I love you, I love you, I love you so much. You've got to have if you love me, you'd have sex with me. I love you, I love you.'" And she said, and she said, "Now close your hand." And they all closed their hands. And she said, "Now I want you to open your hands and see what's there." And they opened their hands, and there was nothing. And she said, "So next time a guy says, the only way that you're going to show me love is by having sex with me, hold up your open hand and say, 'You got nothing.'" And I got to say that to this culture. You got nothing. If sex is the means by which you think you're going to get loved, you're going to express love, the only means, you got nothing.
Yeah.
That is, it's such a counterintuitive to this culture that you practically have to kind of stand in the corner of cocktail parties if you're going to say, "I believe sex is reserved for marriage." People are going to go, "You are so weird, I can't handle you."
Well, you just got that. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, although sex is reserved for marriage, and I totally agree with that, for those of us who are waiting, we still have physical needs, right?
It's true.
So what would you say, like what advice would you have for those people who are still struggling with the physical needs? You know?
Guess what? You're going to have physical needs when you're married too. Physical needs are physical needs. And how you deal with them is an ongoing lifetime experience. We have physical needs for food. We overeat.
Yeah.
We have physical needs for all sorts of things. Now, I will say this is that they have to say, you can't, there's a saying, and it's kind of a stupid saying, but that's me. I just use these all the time. You can't keep the birds from flying over your head, but you can keep them from nesting in your hair.
Back to my point.
What does that mean, James?
It is funny though.
I've never heard that saying before.
Yeah, okay, well, there you go. Starting a new thing in Lisbon.
It's a very interesting humor.
Yeah. And which basically means is that you can't keep temptations away from you ever, but you can't keep them from embedding themselves into your heart and into your mind. And in Romans 8, Paul says that the mindset on the flesh is death, but the mindset on the spirit is life and peace. Where do you set your mind? Where do you set your mind? And I will say this just as clear as I can to men, that if you're involved in pornography, you are teaching your brain to think about women a certain way, and you're giving it something it's going to want more and more and more of. And if you want to live a pure life, if you want to see women differently, you can't be looking at that, because it will crowd out. It will create structures in your brain which will just direct themselves right into that area. So God is very specific about how we are to live holy lives. And we are not perfect. We will never be perfect. But the way in which we achieve a sense, a real spirituality, is by fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, by allowing the Spirit of God to reform our brains, to wake up in the morning and may our first thoughts be that of praise and thanksgiving, keeping our heads and our minds into the Scriptures, and then experiencing God's grace and His forgiveness when we fall, and we always do, and we will. But the falling is less and less and less. Not perfection. There's no sinless
It's a
perfection.
process, right?
It is a process of learning to walk and focusing your heart and your mind and changing your brain. It's fascinating that we were able to be in our business, and one of the focuses was on the neuro network in our brains and how God constructed our brains, that when we actually think about certain things, we create structures in our brains that create pathways, and they're like goat trails. Is that if the goats walk down this trail many times, you can see that trail, and those goats will walk down that way, but they won't walk in the bushes. So what you want to do is you want to create the right kind of trails. You want to create right kind of neural networks, neural pathways, and that is keeping our hearts and our minds and our thoughts in the Scriptures.
Yeah.
Well, I think that I've always gone with the saying is what one thinks about comes about.
Mm-hmm.
And also just to be really clear to the audience, this is not just a man thing. This is a woman thing. Women go through those same desires, those same thought patterns, maybe not as pronounced, or it's not as public, I should say, as men, but it's very real for them as well. And so when you engage in relationship too, there's always that flirting, always maybe wearing when you get dressed before you go, making sure you look a certain way or it shapes your body a certain way. I think we have to be aware of our own self and the temptation in which we set to the other one. But it's, again, I don't want people to think this is just a man thing, so this only applies to you. You know, it's when you have those desires, and you will, if you're a healthy human being, you will, and, you know, an abundance of them, it's really refocusing. And I like the analogy you said, like even food, even though it seems like it's much more of a stronger need than food, that's because food is accepted and we can have as much as we want, right? But for a woman who's trying to lose weight or whatever, trying to get in a certain shape, you know, we have those same, and it's, you rethink. I'm thinking of that, I'm going to retract my brain over here. Or I'm going to pick up scriptures, or I'm going to go for a run, or I'm going to go fishing, whatever that thing is. It's not creating what we know is called dendrites, which are those little goat paths. Every time you have a thought, you create a memory, and it's in dendrites. And so your brain will automatically go there unless you stop creating those dendrites.
Wow.
And what happens is you've already created them, right? So 6 months down the line, your brain may trigger that, and it still has a pathway. You have to retrain and retrain and retrain and rethink to be the man that you want to be, or to be the woman you want to be. It is a daily process.
One more thought about that. It's something I call micro-obedience. Don't lie to yourself. I can't say this more as powerfully as I want to, but whenever we get caught in our pathway, it's because we are lying to ourselves. It's like we're online, it's late at night, we're going through some stuff, and there's a beautiful picture of a woman comes up, and we go, I just want to see what her hair looks like, right? And that's a micro-obedience. We know that when we do that, when we click on that, it's going to lead us somewhere. We're walking down the street, and we see somebody who's very attractive, and we see it. We can't keep that bird from our circling over our heads, but we can bounce our eyes away from that and go, I know if I take another 5 seconds and stare at that, it's going to cause me to lust. It's going to cause my mind to go a certain direction. Don't lie to yourself. It's something that I absolutely love about Peterson, what's his first name? Jordan Peterson, when he talks about living a life of truth, living a life where you're not lying to yourself. Well, Jesus said that way before Jordan Peterson, that God is not a God of lies. Satan is a God of lies. God is the God of truth. His word is truth. And when we're walking in the truth, then we can actually we can actually walk a path that we couldn't walk when we were lying to ourselves or listening to lies.
Yeah.
Should we wrap up with the
Yeah,
last
with the
question?
last question.
Yes. And that one was about if or should church play a role in helping and guiding and supporting Christian singles? Yeah, and then maybe even how. Yeah.
Do you want to say something before I
We wrap up?
lower the boom?
I would say no, it's not the church's
Yeah.
responsibility. I would say if you are referring to church as an organization or a building,
Yeah.
okay? But if you see church as a community, then yes.
Yeah.
I think that we have relationships within our community. And to seek out, for women to seek out a godly woman who's living the life that you too want to live. And for men,
Yeah.
finding really strong moral, rooted men. And that, I say absolutely.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with that. Do I think that an organization could set up like a singles ministry or whatever? No,
Yeah.
I don't. I don't think it's their responsibility per se, but their responsibility is to nurture and to grow the community that it has really strong Christians that can help be a resource.
Yeah, I like that.
And speaking as one who was a singles pastor for about a decade, worked with singles, I don't believe in singles ministries anymore.
Wow.
I really don't. I think singles need to integrate completely into the body of Christ. I think they can go out and hang out together and have fun and do things together. But I don't think there's anything about being a single that is special or unique to being a married person or a senior adult. I think we all experience the same stuff and we need each other. But one of the things, though, that I will say is that accountability is important. And if guys get together and have a Bible study, or you can, I've been in Bible studies and then I've been in Bible studies, okay? So the Bible studies that I find I've had some kind of contempt of is kind of like we go and we study, we read it, and we walk away and nothing really changes. The Bible studies that really impacted my life was when guys got together and they looked each other in the eyes and they started this way. They said, is there anything that you saw today or saw this week, anything that you looked at this week, anything that you did this week that you need to talk to us about? Is there anything that you did that offended Jesus or caused you to walk away from the path?
Mm.
And the accountability, and to say, and then the last question they'd say, did you lie? Did you just lie to me? and I tell you, you think differently. You act differently. You study the Word differently when you're involved in that kind of level of accountability and truth, and unwillingness just to say, oh, we're just going to play. We're going to play Christian. We're going to play knowledge games here. We're going to see, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. That's our issue.
Wow.
Yeah. I really think myself as well that there's so much value in community, and what I've noticed in my life that a lot of my perspectives, and also I'm learning so much just by, for example, going to dinner parties or to picnics in the park where there are also married couples, some that are around my age and also some that have been married for many years, some even with their children already. I feel like, especially because I grew up in a home that didn't show me what I actually now hope to have in my life, this actually helps me a lot because I can see an example of what is possible. And I see healthy communication. I see people being very open about that they do have struggles, but they also love each other very much, and how they're trying and how they're creating their life together. And something like that, I think, is very healthy and very valuable for everyone, every single person as well in that space to see and to learn, and just to be inspired by as well.
And I don't think that ever ends. I mean, even at my age,
Yeah.
I have a core group of women
Yeah.
that hold me accountable, that I
Yeah.
can
That's
still, it is so valuable and important.
Yeah.
Just as me as a whole human being,
Yeah.
but to connect with other strong Christian women
Absolutely.
that I can go to or that can come to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I think we can end it there.
Yeah.
Yeah. This has been an absolutely amazing episode.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah.
Thanks for
I
coming.
feel honored. I really do.
Like
Yeah.
this is you guys are our first guests, and
Yeah.
I mean, what guests to have? Like James and Cheri, like you guys are amazing.
Oh, it's
Hopefully
only
it
up
doesn't affect the rest of the podcast,
It's
but-
only uphill from here.
yeah.
No,
So-
yeah. Such a blessing to even just sit here and listen to you guys. Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
hope people who are listening gain a lot from this
Yeah.
conversation. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank
So
you
yeah,
much.
see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.